Kanye West making all the headlines. We couldn't let it go. If you haven't seen our last video, we done a quick review of the Piers Morgan Kanye West interview and the backlash, that's sort of all over the media right now. It just made me question a little bit whether or not maybe some of Kanye's points are validated in a certain regard. The length to which sort of mainstream media are covering this story. So that's an interesting point that we'll look at, and I'll share some articles and things that I found online to that regard. But also, I want to question. So what's come out today is that Adidas have ended their partnership with Kanye West due to his comments, and whether or not that was part of a strategy on Kanye's part. Because a lot of mainstream media outlets are covering the fact that Adidas have severed ties apparently with Kanye West. But yeah, so they've taken a big hit and kind of coming up smelling of roses a little bit. So was that strategy on their side, or was it in fact strategy on Kanye's side, in the sense that he's now effectively out of his contract and doesn't need to fulfill the remaining obligations of that contract without having to buy out the contract and being penalized to that sum of £260 million or dollars, which he would have been liable for himself had he opted to end the contract. And the reason I'm thinking about that, and the reason that comes to my mind, is kind of what we see in sports, and certainly in Premier League football recently, where you have a deal where players and even managers these days will run their contract down and then they can move to another club, and they can get a big signing on bonus for doing so. But however, if they want to leave their contract while they're still contractually obligated, they effectively have to buy their way out of that contract and take the financial hit. So could we be seeing a similar thing with Kanye West here? It's something that hasn't been covered in mainstream media, and it's just an interesting point to raise. If we go back a month, and I'm going to share some since deleted tweets sent out by Kanye West, he was maneuvering to effectively leave Adidas up to a month ago, long before any of the current sort of public backlash came, or before any of the recent comments that he's made. Kanye West posted the following tweets, and I'm going to post them up on the screen now, and they read as follows. So Adidas, I'm not speaking with Torben again. Now that's Torben Schumacher, who's the senior vice president over at Adidas. So I'll start again. Adidas, I'm not speaking with Torben again. I'm the king. I only speak to the decision makers. So that's by all accounts quite a confrontational tweet, and he's been quite open on many platforms about the tension between the two brands, and that he feels that he doesn't have full creative control over the brand, and he feels like sort of the deal that he had wasn't necessarily in keeping with the value that he adds to the company. And he's been very vocal on multiple platforms. You just need to go on Google or YouTube to look for past interviews with Kanye, and he speaks about this tension. So it's not the first time there's been this kind of sentiment toward Adidas by any stretch of an imagination. And up until now, all of that has been initiated by Ye himself. So I'll go on to post the next tweet. So it says, Adidas, I'm willing to give you 20% of sales, not ownership, as a non-exclusive manufacturing and distribution partner. So again, this doesn't sound like an employee speaking to their boss. This sounds more akin to a boss or a perceived boss speaking to an employee, or certainly a partner, an equal partner. And that figure of 20%, I think, is a flip reverse of kind of the current situation that Kanye was in at the time, where Adidas were benefiting largely over the sale of Yeezy shoes. And I can't quote the figure off the top of my head, but I know that Adidas's sort of recent resurgence over the last 6 or 7 years in competition with Jordan Brand and Nike has been wholly and exclusively down to their partnership with Kanye West, even in the Yeezy brand. So he does have a load of leverage over there, or did have, should I say, a load of leverage over there. And I think he feels as if he wasn't getting paid what he was worth anyhow. And the last tweet is as follows. Adidas, I'm willing to give you guys a royalty, 20% of net profit. So again, he's just doubling down on the previous tweet, basically, and just really making his opinion and his views well known publicly, to say that he's not happy with his deal and he feels like he's got more leverage, and he's willing to openly call Adidas out, and even calling out the senior vice president in Torben Schumacher by name. So, you know, you can put this information together and deduce your own outcomes, but it doesn't seem as if Kanye West was fearful for his future over at Adidas, and seemed to be, navigating a route out of the company anyway in terms of their partnership deal. For those who are into popular culture, will be very familiar with the famous interview that Sway done with Kanye West on the Sway in the Morning show, where, we all know how it goes.
You ain't got the answer, Sway.
And Kanye has since kind of reversed on his opinion, on his view that he gave on that particular interview, and openly admitted recently that, maybe Sway did have the answers, and that going alone, given the power and the leverage of the Yeezy brand, is the way to go. So it doesn't come as a surprise to me that this partnership between Yeezy and Adidas has come to an end. I just find it interesting that the rhetoric that everyone's now jumped on, and all you're going to see on mainstream media, is that, Adidas have severed their partnership due to Kanye's anti-Semitic rants or hate speech and however else they're framing it as. Whereas in fact, it might be sort of more of a mutual termination, and certainly one that Kanye was leveraging for long before this came to, the public domain. It's like, that situation where you're going out with a girl and things are hitting the rock, so to speak, and you want to dump them before they dump you, so you don't look bad amongst your peers. That's what it feels like has sort of happened with Adidas, because they didn't make this announcement instantly. It was only like, it seems to be like online public backlash and pressure and petitions being signed and these sorts of things that they've announced this. But yeah, I'm not necessarily buying it, but it's just an alternative opinion. It's an alternative perspective, and one that I thought I'd share with you guys. But as I said at the top of the video, I'm surprised at the level of, front and center that this story has got, because, I was looking online. Let me just cover the list of outlets that is running with this story right now. So you can Google it for yourself, but I'll post a little video up on the screen now that just shows the coverage. So look, we've got BBC News. Adidas cuts ties with rapper Kanye West over anti-Semitism. We've got The Guardian. Adidas cuts ties. We've got Sky News. Adidas ends partnership. We've got The Financial Times. Adidas ends tie-up with Kanye West. We've got Forbes, interestingly. Billionaire no more is what they're going with. So Kanye West's anti-Semitism obliterates his net worth. So Forbes are actually going on record to claim that, he's no longer a billionaire as a result of this, which is, you've got to take with a pinch of salt, because Forbes are, by all accounts, never accurate with their postings, by all accounts, at the best of times. But it feels like a little bit of slander there on their part. Like, why? I get that, Adidas have cut their ties, but why are they leading with a headline about his financial status as a result? Do we not need to see what comes out in the wash with this? Do they know the inner dealings of that particular partnership and that agreement, and how it ended and what he's due as a result of that? I don't know. Let's go on. Kim Kardashian had something to say, and we'll come back on that, because I got a viewpoint on that. But look, it goes on. We've got The Guardian again. We've got the New York Times. We've got Sky. We've got Bloomberg. We've got Fortune. We've got CNBC. We've got Reuters. We've got Washington Post. Every mainstream media outlet that you can think of is running with this story front and center, and they're framing it in a way that obviously paints Kanye in at as the bad guy in this, and he may well be in a lot of people's eyes, and some people may see it from a different point of view. So the question I ask is, does that in some way validate what he was saying about mainstream media and this sort of bully mentality and this sort of old boys clique mentality? What I'm seeing now as far as a response, almost, one could argue it validates what was being said. Going back to what Kim Kardashian said, she tweeted today as follows: Hate speech is never okay or excusable. I'm sure we can agree. I stand together with the Jewish community and call on the terrible violence and hateful rhetoric towards them to come to an immediate end. And again, I completely agree. Is it coincidence or is the timing deliberate where she's come out with this tweet? Is she speaking specifically about Ye in this scenario? But for Kim Kardashian to almost allude or draw parallels between what he said and terrible violence seems a little bit, I don't know, it's a little bit fishy, because has Kanye West himself incited violence? Has he demonstrated violence? Has he acted out any violence? Is she tweeting this because this is her opinion of her husband or former husband? Has she only just found out that he incites terrible violence and hateful rhetoric now, having been married to him for a number of years and raised a family with him? Or is it because she's been lent on by external influences to put out this tweet? Again, I'm just throwing out the question. And by the way, this isn't a slow news day. This is a day where, you know, Ukraine have just raised fears of an impending nuclear attack, where Rishi Sunak becomes Britain's first prime minister of Asian heritage, you know, which is big global news, and that's something to commend and celebrate. I'm sure for many people. And there's been massive floods in Nigeria over the past few weeks, which have culminated in, you know, over a million, into the millions of people being evacuated or left stranded from their homes, you know, and they've effectively been left by the rest of the world to their own devices, and people are dying in the hundreds and thousands. We've heard stories about, you know, 6 Palestinian men unfortunately lost their lives, allegedly at the hands of Israeli special forces. I don't know if that's the case. This has been what's reported. You know, these are things that, when we talk about terrible violence and hateful rhetoric, these are things that are happening that, in my mind, are more significant in the grand scheme of things. I'm one to always try and bring balance to an argument. I hate bullies and I hate bullying. And we see a lot of it online. You know, we need to educate people, whether it be racism, of any form, discrimination, but jumping on the bandwagon and people that aren't involved in those communities, just calling for somebody's head publicly, and sort of this ganging up mentality and this cancel culture, I don't subscribe to, I don't believe in. And I think it's, you know, potentially more dangerous than what the initial issue itself was. It basically means that there can only be one viewpoint, whether it be right, whether it be wrong. It's just one centralized viewpoint, and that's a dangerous thing for the world, and one that I'm not here to see.